Hello, everybody. Shavua Tov. I hope it was a wonderful Shabbat. Tonight, we are going to read Levi Yitzchak Miberdichev's, that's Rabbi Levi Yitzchak of the town of Berdichev. We're going to read his understanding of Korach and ask the question, according to him, what was Korach's actual sin? What was the thing that he did wrong? And in doing this, we'll ask the bigger question of how can we experience God on a daily basis? What is our access point to God? Shalom, Yochid. Glad to be learning together tonight. Okay, so we're going to jump right into it. We're in this book, the Kedushat Levi, looking at what was Korach's actual sin. So it says, we'll start here. Vayikach Korach ben Yitzhar ben Kahat ben Levi Datan Aviram. And Korach took Datan and Aviram, and they rebelled against Moses. Hine HaRamban HaKadosh Katav. The Ramban writes, Mechamat shehamraglim yadu, shezeh hador lo yikansu le'eretz Yisrael. Because it was known because of the spies that this generation would not enter the land of Israel. Mechamat zeh nitkalkel k'tzat ha'ahava asher haya le'Yisrael el Moshe. Because of that, some of the love that Israel had for Moses was diminished. V'zeh garam shechalku v'hirharu achar Moshe. And this was the reason that they separated and they complained against Moses. Ulachach nismechu haparshiot. And it's for that reason that these two Torah portions are right next to each other. Remember, in Shlach, in last week's Torah portion, the spies are sent to the land of Israel, and they come back and they tell the Israelites that they won't be able to conquer the land of Israel. And because of that, they're not allowed to go to the land of Israel. The Israelites are to wander in the desert for 40 years. And then immediately after that story, we have this Torah portion. We have Korach. And so he says it's not random. It's because they were now going to have to wander the desert for 40 years instead of going to the land of Israel, that some of the love for Moses was diminished, and now people are starting to rebel against him. So Ad Kan, Tochen Devarav. So it's because of that these words begin here. Ha'inyan, kihine, hayador hamidbar, v'dor shenichnasu la'eretz Yisrael. Behold, in this part of the Torah, we're presented with two different generations. The generation of the desert, and the generation who are going to get to go into the land of Israel. That is to say, the children of those who came out of Egypt get to go to the land of Israel, whereas those who came out of Egypt themselves have to wander in the desert until they die. So here we have these two generations. V'hine, dor hamidbar, halashon midbar hu dibor, shepa'alu hakol b'dibor, ki yesh tzadikim asher hem po'alim hakol b'dibor, ein tzrichim l'shum asiyah. The generation of the midbar represent dibur. They represent speech. For them, miracles occur without any need of action. V'dor shenichnasu le'eretz Yisrael, v'meraz al ha'asiyah. But the generation that's going to go into the land of Israel is a hint about action. Shahayu tzrichim la'asot eze pu'ula, because for them, miracles occurred only when there was action. So these two generations represent two of these three different worlds. the generation of the Midbar. Midbar comes from the root daber, which means to speak. So he says the generation of the desert of the Midbar represents the world of speech, whereas the generation that's going to go into the land of Israel represents action. The way that things are actualized in this world go from this. It starts in thought, and then that thought is brought down into speech. And then that speech is further brought into this world in action. And so these two generations represent speech and action. At this point, I was contemplating if I should read this or not, but he gives an example. I'll just explain it. He says, for Moses, all of the miracles that Moses does are through speech. For Moses, all he has to do is speak and miracles occur. For the generation of the land of Israel, he points to Joshua, and he says, for Joshua, all of Joshua's battles, his military victories, all of his the miracles that occurred for him, there was some kind of action. And that's because Moses was part of the generation who represents speech, and Joshua was part of the generation that represents action. V'zeh, shekavash Yoshua et Yericho, but then he's going to offer a exception to the rule. But in the situation where Joshua conquered Jericho, Hakol b'dibor, the whole thing happened with speech. If you remember that story, Joshua marches around the wall of Jericho 7 times, blowing the shofar, and then the walls come tumbling down. There's no action there. So he says this is the one exception where Joshua and his generation had a miracle occur to them just through the world of speech without having to do any action. As it's said from our rabbis in Yerushalmi, in the Talmud, in the Jerusalem Talmud in Moed Katan, Humechamat, this is because Yericho kavash b'Shabbat. This is because Jericho was conquered on Shabbat. Umavoar bekitvei ha'arizal, and the Ari teaches us that hasechel sheyesh laharav bechol, that the wisdom that one's teacher has during the weekday, yesh latalmid b'Shabbat, the student also has on Shabbat. V'haya bo az hasechel shehaya leMoshe bechol. And this, the knowledge that Moses had during the weekday, Moshe pa'al hakol b'dibor, Moses, to whom miracles happen just by speech, ubazeh bechina, and it's in that mode, kavash Yoshua Yericho b'Shabbat, that Joshua conquered Jericho on Shabbat al yedei hadibor, just by speech. So he says that's the one exception to the rule. For Joshua and his generation, all the miracles happen by action, but because it happened on Shabbat, all of our intelligence gets elevated a little bit. You know, our opportunity for miracles get elevated a little bit. And so he says for Joshua and his generation, they had a miracle through speech on Shabbat. Let's see, Elaine, my mom says, ironic that all of Moses' miracles had to do with speech, despite his speech disability. That's true. I think there's something to be said for the fact that Moses represents the world of speech, and he also represents a kind of broken speech too. Okay, Aval Ba'ai, but now back to Joshua. Aval Ba'ai, Usha'ar Milchamot Hayat Tzarich Liv'ula. But for all of Joshua's other battles, including conquering the city of Ai and the other wars, there needed to be some action. V'hine, Torah Moshe, hu keneged hadibor. And behold, the Torah of Moses is in accordance with speech. Shepa'al hakol etzel Hashem yitzbarach im hadibor. That the whole thing, or everything that occurred in Moses and Moses' life, in the story of Moses, was through speech. And And I'm going to expand on this a little bit. I think when we say that the Torah of Moses corresponds to speech, if you remember to do the mitzvah of reciting the Torah, we have to say it. The whole Torah itself is, part of the world of speech. If you're going to fulfill the mitzvah of reading Torah on Shabbat, you can't just read it. You can't think about it. You have to read it out loud. So he says the Torah itself corresponds to speech. Aval yesh la hitlabshut al yedei hamidot gam ba'olam ha'asiyah. But the Kedush HaLevi says, but there's also, underneath the world around us, God, enclosed in the world of action. So he says, on the one hand, we can learn about God through the Torah, through Torah study. But we should not think that just because Torah study is one way to access God, that we can't access God through the world around us, through living and breathing and acting and getting our hands dirty in the real world. Here, we can learn about God too. He says, don't think that God only exists in the world of thought or the world of speech. The world of action too is full of God. I'll also point out, this is a major Hasidic principle, the idea that you can learn and have a deep connection with God, even if you're unlearned, just by remembering that God is hidden in this world if we just look close enough. Kama Amar HaKatuv, as it says in the book of Isaiah, Ani Rishon va'ani Acharon. There's a verse that God says, I am the first and I am the last. And here, the Kedush HaLevi is interpreting that to mean I am the first, that is, I live in the world of speech, and I am the last, I also live in the world of action. My mom writes, so where does he say that thought lives? Perhaps in both action and speech. Perhaps. I think each of these, the idea is each of these, is kind of like a seed blossoming for the next. They have the world of thought, and then from that comes the world of speech, and then from speech comes the world of action. I'm going up, but I really should be going down, where we bring kind of the more esoteric, down into the world. Vehine, Korach, and behold, take Korach. Kishera'a she'oto hador lo yikansu le'eretz Yisrael. When he saw that his generation was not going to go to the land of Israel, Lo haya ma'amin bazeh shetorat Moshe yesh la hitlabshu gam ba'olam ha'asiyah. He believed that the Torah of Moses could not be actualized in the world of action. He thought that God did not reside in the world around us, only in speech, only in thought, but in the world and the messiness of the physical world, that's not where God lived. And he believed that because he heard that he wasn't going to go into the land of Israel. And he thought, well, if that's the case, if this world is imperfect, if I, am constrained by my physical reality, then God must not be here at all. And so God punished Korach measure for measure. V'tiftach haaretz et piha, and he opened the mouth of the earth. Haaretz hu haolam ha'asiyah, the earth which represents the world of action. Laharot shegam ba'olam ha'asiyah yesh la hitlabshut Torat Moshe, to show that also in the world of action, the Torah and God can be found. V'zehu haremez. I think we'll stop there. I love that we say God punished Korach measure for measure. Korach said God cannot be found in this world. The Torah exists in speech But the Torah can't be found in this world. We can't live out Torah values. We can't find God in the dirtiness of the physical world. And so God says, if you are going to spread that message, you are going to be swallowed up by the world to show, and I am going to be in charge of it, to show everybody that I'm here too. Symbolically, I think there's something beautiful that we can learn from this. We have two choices, according to this story from the Kedushat Levi. He says, on the one hand, we can exist in the physical world without believing that that we can learn about God, that we can access God through it. And if we do that, then, according to the way the Kedushat Levi understands this, we will get swallowed up by the world. If we live without thinking that there's something deeper, something more marvelous, something hidden, something underneath it all, then we get swallowed up in the physical world. We get completely consumed, we get distracted, we lose ourselves, we lose the possibility of elevating and of getting close to God. We get swallowed up in the messiness of the physical world. But when we remember that in each thing we do in this physical world, when we're interacting with another person, when we're going about our daily business, when we're walking, during those profound moments, during the mundane moments, in every moment, God is there, underneath. And if we hold in our minds the possibility that there is something to learn about God from this moment in the physical world, there's some way to relate to God through what's happening right around us, then not only do we not get swallowed up by the world, by the messiness of action and physicality, but we also raise ourselves and raise our souls as we bring God down and have that relationship with the divine, with that which is bigger than us. So with that, I'll stop here. If there's anybody who has questions or comments, you're welcome to write it in the chat. Thank you for for learning tonight. I'll give us a blessing that for this upcoming week, we remember, and I challenge you to start your day. We talked about this when we were going through stories of the early Hasidic masters. There was a suggestion to start your day before going about your business, saying in plain language, God, before you open your eyes, God, be with my sight today. God, be with my ears today. Be with my hands, be in my nose, and be in my mouth. Inviting God to be part of your senses as a way to connect to God through our physical experience here. So with that, I'll say Shavua Tov, wishing everybody a wonderful week ahead, and looking forward to next week.